The majority of my adult life has been spent alone. It's one of the main drawbacks of being a freelance contractor in the modern age. My profession allows for a considerable amount of freedom, but when you're the only person in your department, very few people you're working with understand what you're talking about. It can be isolating to not have any peers, because something happens without them. If you're the type of person who chats with coworkers at work, when those coworkers disappear, the conversations kinda don't. Which means that the one-sided imaginary arguments you have in the shower are the only types of conversations you're having. The rest of the world doesn't go away when you're alone, you simply roleplay as the rest of the world. When you're acting in and writing the script of your life, the world starts to feel like something predictable and controllable. You begin to understand exactly what the world wants you to do because you are the world, so you know what the world is thinking. When you play both you and everyone else, the lines between you and everyone else begin to blur, and you start to convince yourself that you alone are the only one who understands what the world wants because it's you, and you know what you want, and what you want is what the world wants. And what the world wants is Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Hi, my name is Will, and this is First Draft, Second Pass, a video essay series where we look at films that feel like first drafts and give them a second pass. In part 1 of this two-part series, we'll be looking at the second installment in the Star Wars Prequel saga, Attack of the Clones. So first, I'd like to address the giant CGI clone trooper in the room. This movie looks like a deleted scene in a Pixar film before the particle effects have been rendered. It's at best an interesting look at where the industry was in the visual effects department in 2002, and at worst, it's just awful to look at. But regardless of how bad this film looks, the dialogue, characters, and story beats are even worse. So let's recap. The film starts with an attempt on the newly elected Senator Padmé's life, who is on her way to cast a vote in the Senate. The Senate is deciding whether or not to create an army in reaction to the growing separatist movement that is threatening to break it apart. Padmé assumes that the person behind the attack is the ominously titled Count Dooku, who is also the leader of the separatist movement. Ever the idiots, the Jedi say it's angry spice miners, because Dukes is an old buddy of theirs and they can't imagine a world where an old white man would intentionally do something bad.
Couldn't assassinate anyone. It's not in his character.
The Jedi assign space monks cosplaying as trailer park trash father and son Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker to watch her sleep. Much to Anakin's dismay, Padmé turns off the nanny cams.
I don't think she liked me watching her.
What is she thinking?
It makes me feel uncomfortable.
Padmé is nearly murdered by space worms, but is saved when Obi-Wan and Anakin sense the worms' ill intent, I guess? Obi-Wan dives out the window and thus begins a semi-interesting chase through the streets of Coruscant. Obi-Wan and Anakin exchange witty banter, minus the witty, and chase after the assailant, who is revealed to be a changeling, an alien that can change into a human lady or an old human lady, which is maybe the second worst X-Men power? They catch the assassin, but before they can get an answer, the assassin is assassinated by an assassin. So I guess Jango Fett subcontracted his bounty to another bounty hunter, but then followed the bounty hunter on a high-speed chase throughout the entire city just on the off chance she fails, and when she does, he eliminates her so she can't snitch, but then he flies away with all the subtlety of a Soviet-era space shuttle. Just how big is this guy's ego that he thinks they wouldn't notice him? Never mind. The Jedi can't figure out who is behind this.
I think the Count Dooku is behind it.
The dark side clouds everything.
So they decide to send their most competent and qualified Jedi to instruct these two idiots to fix it. Despite giving Padmé nearly constant rape eyes, the Council assign Anakin, I am clearly not okay with my vow of celibacy Skywalker, to spend a long weekend drinking wine, lounging by the fire, disturbing wildlife, and acting like just a real red flag on the ridiculously romantic-looking Naboo. Meanwhile, in a completely different movie, Obi-Wan visits a 1950s diner to meet with a mustachioed short-order cook with an encyclopedic knowledge of interstellar weaponry named Dexter Jetster. No, I am not kidding.
Want a cup of joe with you?
Bob's Burgers then tells Obi-Wan that the dart is from a planet called Camino. Obi then goes to his local library and discovers that there is no Camino on the map, even though there was gravitational evidence of the planet being there, and concludes it must have been deleted. He is assured that it can't be deleted because the archives are run by old white people and mistakes aren't in their business. He then goes to Yoda, who also can't figure out why a planet that can't be deleted seems to have been deleted, until a child suggests that maybe the deleted planet is in fact deleted.
Truly wonderful the mind of a child is.
Has the dark side clouded your critical logical thinking? Meanwhile, Anakin, not wanting to miss an opportunity to make every situation worse, undermines Padme's authority in front of her boss and just acts like a real piece of shit asswipe trash can of a person.
Sorry, milady.
Anywho, on the water planet, Ewan McGregor pretends to talk to aliens and discovers that many years prior, someone ordered a clone army under the guise of a long-dead Jedi Master. He then discovers that the man the clone army is based off of is none other than the guy who killed a lady who killed this lady, but not this lady. Sensing the height of the jig and knowing that it indeed may be up, Jango hightails it out of there, but not before Obi-Wan lowjacks Slave 1 and they have a space battle featuring legit one of the coolest audio effects in the franchise. Anakin has a bad dream about his mom and leaves to investigate, but not before once more turning the creep factor up to 11.
Your presence is soothing.
They head back to the desert planet and visit lovable dirtbag and Don Quixote impersonator, Watto. In an attempt to cover up a plot hole set up by the first movie, Watto sold Shmi to a moisture farmer named Lars who has a son from a previous marriage named Uncle Owen. After buying Shmi, a real human person, Lars fell in love with her, married her, and then set her free, hopefully not in that order, illustrating just one of the many problematic depictions of romantic relationships this movie has to offer. Anakin runs off to save Shmi, but is too late and she dies in his arms. In a fit of rage, Anakin then slaughters every man, woman, and child in the immediate vicinity. Let me just say that again because it's important. The romantic lead in this film takes a quick detour from the plot to commit a small act of genocide.
And I slaughtered them like animals. I hate them!
Oh my. Meanwhile, on the city planet, Obi-Wan's message about the clone army has reached the Senate. In a move that ensures that even the most thoughtful and well-written pieces of canonical Star Wars fiction will have to include the words Misa, Jar Jar Binks moves to adopt the Patriot Act and give Supreme Chancellor Palpatine emergency powers over the Senate, much to the delight of these mean-looking aliens. So how does this work again? It just takes one person to suggest a thing and then it's true? No voting or seconding? I'm starting to understand how someone using the alias of a long-dead Jedi can order up and pay for a clone army without anyone checking in or noticing for over a decade. Now on the insect planet, Obi-Wan sneaks around a pre-rendered background from Abe's Odyssey before overhearing the Legion of Doom's plans to unleash a droid army. He is able to send another brief status report before he's captured by locals. He's in prison, and we finally come face-to-face with the film's main antagonist, Count Dooku. Dooku pretends to be on Obi-Wan's side, reveals he was Qui-Gon's master, and even lets slip that the Sith are in the Senate. Quite the reveal. Obi-Wan refuses to join him, and well, in Obi-Wan's defense, he is played by Christopher Lee. Padme and Anakin hear Obi-Wan's message and head to the bug world to help him. They do a fairly decent job of pretending like they are in a real factory before being captured by the bug people. Padme says a line written by an old man pretending to be a young woman.
I've been dying a little bit each day since you came back into my life.
And our heroes are reunited to be murdered gladiator style by abused and mistreated wildlife. By now we figured out that the Trade Federation is working with the Separatists, and it was Dooku and the Trade Federation who are out to kill Padme as revenge for locking them up in the last movie. So the mystery of the attempted assassinations is solved. Padme must be so relieved, or is she... well, how about Obi-Wan? You just solved the, nobody cares. Anakin? Yeah, you're busy. Things look dire until our heroes are saved when the cavalry arrives. The droids are unleashed, and the Jedi are beat down by an unrelenting onslaught of droid puns.
This is such a drag. I'm quite beside myself.
Things look dire until our heroes are saved when the cavalry arrives. Looks like this bounty hunter isn't the only thing being cloned. Get it? Because the plot points are the same. It repeats. The clones attack and Dooku escapes, but not before grabbing plans for a better movie trilogy. During the chase, Padme is knocked from the ship, Anakin proves that men can be shrill too, and they finally catch up to fight a young man wearing the face of a very old man. Obi-Wan's limbs are protected by the sequels, but not Anakin's, who is disarmed. Twice. Yoda arrives and gets the full R2-D2 treatment, and we witness yet another lightsaber fight, this time geriatric edition. Duke splits, war is declared, Annie marries Paddy, and Palpatine lies about having a plan. This movie can't figure out what it wants to be. It starts as a simple point-and-click mystery, moves to a cheesy dollar bin romance novel, shifts to a basic action-adventure, and then finally becomes a cutscene from Call of Duty Galactic Edition. So the movie opens with an assassination attempt on Padme, and we're immediately thrown into the mystery of who is behind these attacks. There's another attempt on her life that leads our Jedi to Kamino, and yet another mystery involving a dead Jedi and a clone army. This leads Obi-Wan to the bug planet where he discovers that the Separatists are creating an army of droids, which is not the answer to either of the questions asked earlier. Sure, the things are somewhat connected, but the movie shifts its priorities so quickly that if you aren't paying attention, you will completely miss the reveal that it was the Trade Federation behind the attacks.
What about the senator from Naboo? Is she dead yet?
When I rewatched the film, I couldn't remember who was behind the assassination attempts, and I was honestly excited to be part of the mystery. But the reason I couldn't remember is because it doesn't matter. What Obi-Wan discovers isn't who is behind the attacks, it's what Dooku and the Separatists are up to, which is a small subplot that occurs in the background of just a few scenes. We don't even see Dooku in a scene until nearly the end of the movie. There is a dramatic principle in storytelling called Chekhov's gun. It basically says if you introduce a gun in the first act, someone should fire it in the third. Attack of the Clones introduces a gun in the first act, and then in the third act, all the characters get into a time machine and go back in time to fight a giant space monster. Maybe the gun is involved, but who cares? The end result is a film that's first act doesn't match its third. So while all of this is happening, Anakin and Padme are doing nothing but have one long picnic together. They go to Naboo to avoid any more assassination attempts, and it does the trick right away. The only real threat of violence is Anakin, because he's, Look, I don't want to go on a long rant about this guy, but he comes across as so villainous, it's crazy.
Please don't look at me like that.
Why not?
It makes me feel uncomfortable.
Sorry, milady.
Dude. So let's talk about some intentional villains. Now, it's never revealed in the film, but it's heavily implied that either Sidious or Dooku ordered the clone army because Sidious says,
Everything is going as planned.
After watching the film a couple of times, I was able to piece together what that plan probably was. 10 years ago, Palpatine ordered a clone army for the Republic under the guise of a dead Jedi and used a local bounty hunter as the primary clone. 10 years later, he has his very well-known apprentice organize an anti-Republic movement and enlist the Trade Federation to create an army. As payment for the droid army, Dooku hires the same bounty hunter from the clone army, who then subcontracts out a hit on Padme, an old enemy of the Trade Federation. Padme then goes under the protection of the Jedi, and they foil the subcontracted bounty hunter's plan, and this leads the Jedi back to the cloners and the discovery of the clone army and its connection to the first bounty hunter. While trying to escape, the bounty hunter accidentally leads the Jedi straight to the Separatists and the Trade Federation's army. The Jedi tell the Senate about the two armies, thus forcing the stand-in for the senator to propose giving emergency powers and therefore an army to the guy who started the whole thing. So the same guy you base your entire clone army off of is also the same guy who leads the Jedi to the army by screwing up 3 times in a row? And you're telling me this all was planned? So regardless of how terrible this plan is, there is one scene that stands out to me. When Obi-Wan is captured, Dooku tells Obi-Wan that he started the Separatist movement because the Senate is being controlled by Darth Sidious and is therefore compromised. And from what we know from the other movies, this is true. It starts to imply that Dooku is working against Palpatine and that Obi-Wan, by staying loyal to the Republic, is on the wrong side. But later we find that Dooku is working for the Sith. So why reveal Darth Sidious at all? It's a weird double fake-out thing that seems to be only there to mislead the audience. Quick aside, there is a plot device in fiction called a red herring. A red herring is basically a misdirect set up by the author to mislead the main characters. So at the start of the interrogation scene, Dooku has been set up as the main antagonist, but then Dooku reveals extra information that points to Darth Sidious being behind the plot, and therefore casting doubt on whether we were right to be suspicious of him, and makes us wonder if we were indeed rooting for the right side, and it adds a layer of complexity that makes things going forward much more interesting. Until it is revealed at the end that he is in fact working with the Sith, meaning that Dooku is both the main perpetrator and the red herring, which is kind of cheating. This is a problem because in the end the movie is asking you to pay close attention to the plot, but then it breaks its own rules and punishes you for playing along. Collaboration is paramount to the success of films. Film is a weird art form because it's basically all the art forms in one. There's writing, photography, music, sound design, fashion, acting. The list just goes on and on. It basically means that if you are an aspiring filmmaker, the first thing you need to do is find people willing to invest their art in you. It can take a while to find people who can understand and trust you, and it means you'll probably make a bunch of bad films. Because until you learn to trust others and use their strengths, they won't trust you and you'll never be able to create something great. If, however, you are lucky enough to find those people early and are able to start making great content at the start of your career, that doesn't necessarily mean you are out of danger. In fact, it can flip. You can start to believe that you alone are the only reason why there was success in the first place. You can end up pushing away the people who put you where you are and end up completely alone. The more alone you are, the less you reach out to others, and things begin to spiral. So in the end, it doesn't really matter how much money or resources you may have at your disposal. The fundamental element to creative, interesting, and entertaining films is empathy. Without that, your projects will just feel selfish. Thank you for watching. First Draft Second Pass is funded by Patreon. If you want us to keep making videos like the one you just saw, please consider becoming a patron. We'll see you next time.